Alright, now what I'm doing is I'm going to test my clay one more time just to make sure that we didn't get too much temper in there. And we're good. We can bend that fine. No cracking. Now there's a couple of ways to make pottery. The first way, and I'm just going to make a little mini one here for a minute to show you, is to make a bottom and then to use rolled, coiled clay and to build up your pottery. I don't find that to be the easiest way, but I'm going to show it to you so that you have an idea. What you would do is to make a base, okay, and then you would want to wet the top of your base, and that's to help the other clay stick to it, and we get that base real good there. Now you do want to keep your hands wet during this. I'm working in the shade today, but if you wanted to, you could work in the sun. It just depends on how hot it is. Pretty hot out here today. So you would make your coil like that. You would take another piece of clay and roll it out into your coil, like that snake that we had a minute ago. And again, I'm just showing you this for an illustration because I'm not going to do this. I'll show you a different way that I like to make pottery. It's a little bit quicker to me, a little bit easier. We can roll this out, and you want it to be pretty consistent. You don't want your coils too thick. The thicker they are, the longer they take to dry, and then the more chance you have of this breaking in the fire. So you can roll this out, and again, you want to wet this clay and stick this piece right on here, just like this. Pinch that off, and there you go. And then you would just keep on doing this for as high as you wanted your pot, as high as you wanted your clay. When you are finished, you would come back along the outside and you would begin to work it with some water, press it down, and work each layer and get them to stick to the layer beyond it. Then you would work your clay until it was as high as you wanted it for your project. So that's the basic idea there. You see, we'll just work this around, and again, it takes some time. To me, it's not as strong, but it's still a good method. A lot of people use this. It's called the coiled method, and you would just go ahead, work this until it was all fashioned together, squeeze it and pinch it and work it until you had a nice smooth surface that was all together. And you would just keep building up on top of that, as I said. We're not going to do that today. What we're going to do is a little bit different. Now again, you want to keep your hands damp during this. What I'm going to do is just take this ball, and I'm going to make kind of a bowl, I guess, today. Okay? So I'm going to take my ball, get it nice and round. And I want it very round because then I'm going to flatten it out. So just working at making sure there aren't any air bubbles in there again. Make sure that it's nice and moist. Roll it in my hands. Okay? I've wet the table underneath so it doesn't stick too badly. It'll probably still stick a little bit. That's okay. Take it off with our spatula or something if we need to. But I don't want any more of that temper there either. Okay? So wet this down a little bit. Then I'm going to just press my clay out. Again, I want to keep it moist as I'm pressing it. And I'm just going to rub that to an even consistency. And work at clay. Now you don't want it to be too thick. You want your pottery to be kind of level. And I'm going to start here to build these walls up a little bit just by pulling the walls back in. Okay. And we still got a little thickness to work out there on the bottom. So let me work this out, get it kind of flat and round for a minute. And once we do that, we'll come back with you. Alright, what I've done now, I've got this built out. So now I'm starting to build up my walls by pulling it back in. And I'm just going to keep going. And we turned out pretty good here. Again, it's real important here that I keep my clay wet enough to work, but you can see these sides starting to build up, and I just do that by putting pressure on the outside. And you could just fashion this in your hand, it'll work just as well. Got a little bit thick here. I'm just going to pull a pinch of that clay off of there. You want it to kind of be even. And clay is fun to work with, guys. It's something that you get to get your hands in there, get them all wet, get dirty, part of the game. So I'm going to keep working this, and I get it up to the level that I want it to. And again, because we're working with a limited amount of clay here, it's going to be a little bit smaller. That's okay. It'll still work out well. And then I'm going to start working on getting my top kind of level here. So let me work this for a few minutes, and we'll be back with you once that I get it worked out. Alright, now you can see I've got my container pretty well built. I'm just squeezing the sides, making sure all this clay stays in there tight. And there we've got a small bowl. Okay, this will be efficient for maybe a clay pot, a pot that you were going to hold pitch in to make a candle, or if you wanted to build these walls up. Now in order to build the walls up, we're actually going to have to take some time. What we'd have to do is let this dry for a bit, because you can only get clay so high, and once you get it high it's going to begin to collapse on itself. So we could flatten this edge out, we could come back, roll some more clay and put those coils on there and build that up pretty big if we wanted to make a cup. But I think this will suffice for the video. I'm going to work this just a little bit more, smooth it down, make everything nice and level. And then what we're going to do is set this aside for a few days to dry out. Now this is a critical part of the process when you dry this, because you need to make sure that your clay dries evenly and thoroughly. If your clay isn't dry, you can see we've got a pretty good pot here. Okay, this is going to be nice and thick. I've got actually some little impurity in there. I'm going to pull that out so it doesn't crack in the firing, and work this out just a little bit. And I'm going to keep working this a little bit, and then we're going to dry it. So let me show you how to dry this, and then we'll be back in a few days to finish this up. What I'm going to do to dry this is I'm going to take this over and I'm going to set this in the shade. Now at first I'm going to set it up like this. Once it begins to dry a little bit, I will go back and I'll set it up on the edge. If I set it on the other side right now, what would happen is it wouldn't dry very well. It would just mush down and become nothing. So I'm just going to finish right here, a couple of these edges, and again, maybe not a thing of perfection or beauty, but it's going to be functional out there. So let us go ahead and get this dried up for a few days. We'll be back with you and show you the firing process, how to fire this. I may go ahead in the next day or two, because we do have a couple extra days, and when this dries a little bit, I may go ahead and add another layer or two to make this bowl just a little bit deeper. But here we got it. You can see the clay pot, and that was a pretty easy way to make it. I'm going to make this base, I'll add a little more water and just go ahead and smooth that out a little bit more. But we're going to let that set and dry for now, and we'll be back with you in just a few days when we get ready to fire it.